Everybody, this is Nate with a Backcountry beer review. Today I'm on top of Hermit's Peak in the Pecos Wilderness, about 20 miles west of Las Vegas, New Mexico, in the Santa Fe National Forest. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different from my beer review. Normally I'll take a beer I want to try out, talk about the brewery a little bit, then open it up, give it a taste, and give you my notes. Today I'm doing something different. My dad actually had this idea, and he pointed out, you're doing a lot of these local beers, and that's all well and good, but sometimes I want to try the beer that you taste based on the tasting notes, but I can't find it anywhere near me because I don't live anywhere near New Mexico. So one thing you could do that would be really interesting is take a local beer and then find a beer that gets national distribution and compare it to that local beer and judge whether or not you think it's a good example or a good replacement. And I thought, that's a really good idea. And so what I'm doing for this inaugural comparison episode is I'm comparing two, what I would say, they're beers that pretty much began craft brewing as we know it. The first one nationally and the second one locally in the state. The first one is by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, and it's their Pale Ale. This is a pretty ubiquitous beer. I think it was first brewed in 1980, and chances are you've almost definitely heard of Sierra Nevada if you're into beer, but you've probably also had their beer, and there's a pretty good chance that this is the one you've had. Now, I really like Sierra Nevada. They're probably my favorite brewery that gets national distribution. I fell in love with their Pale Ale, and it pretty much introduced me to craft beer. And I've been to their brewery several times in Mills River, North Carolina. Really awesome place. The best brewery tour I've ever been on. So it's an iconic brewery, and this is probably their most iconic beer. Now for the local beer, we're trying Santa Fe Brewing Company out of Santa Fe, New Mexico, their version of a Pale Ale. And like the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, this is the beer that pretty much put them on the spot. They were founded in 1988, which in terms of craft beer, that's really like first generation craft brewing. And this is their first beer that they really produced and distributed to the state. So it's actually kind of funny because I think that this beer is definitely taken a back seat to a lot of their other versions. I actually have not had this beer before a few months ago, and I really like it versus this beer where I've had probably hundreds of times. Now, I haven't tasted either of these beers in like 2 weeks, and I didn't make tasting notes on them because what I'm actually going to be doing is a blind tasting. You can see I've got them pretty well wrapped up in duct tape. I'm going to go from henceforth, there's going to be right hand beer and left hand beer. We're going to give right hand beer the taste first. Hint of duct tape there. I don't know if the brewery did that on purpose. This one, right off the bat, hop forward. It's got some maltiness, and that maltiness is sort of imparting actually kind of like fruity notes. I would say probably like peach. I'd call it ripe peach or ripe apricot. It's not super intense, but really what's forward is the hop notes. I'm getting pretty much pine and resin. It's just got, especially pine. I mean, it tastes like drinking a pine tree. Really good for, the outdoors. Moving on to left-hand beer. I'm going to call it now. Left-hand beer is Santa Fe Brewing Company Pale Ale. I say that because it is super English. It just has that classic creamy English maltiness, that treacle, that caramel, that is so iconic for that country's beers. Knowing what I know about Santa Fe Brewing Company's Pale Ale, I've always thought of it as very English style, even though it's an American style Pale Ale. Ironically, even though I know that the Santa Fe Brewing Company Pale Ale has greater IBUs than the Sierra Nevada by a lot. This is something like 58, or I should say the Santa Fe Brewing. I still don't know what these are, believe me, I'm not cheating. But the Santa Fe Brewing Company, which I think this is like 58, and the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, something like 38. And so it's ironic because this is so much more hop forward and bitter than this one. Yeah, I'm just gonna call it now. This Sierra Nevada, this Santa Fe Brewing. Let's open up a little bit, take off the duct tape, and see which one's which. Right. Okay, so this was right-hand beer, and it is indeed the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. Okay, guys, well there you have it. Right-hand beer was Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, and left-hand beer was Santa Fe Brewing Company Pale Ale. I can sort of understand why in modern day this has sort of taken a back seat to their other offerings. You think about Santa Fe Pale Ales, and granted they're IPAs, but you're thinking 7K, Happy Camper. You're not typically thinking about the classic Pale Ale, And I think a lot of that is because this drinks like an English beer. It may be an American style pale ale, but it drinks like an English beer. An English pale ale, that is. It definitely is more Samuel Smith's than it is Sierra Nevada. And obviously there's nothing wrong with that. If I'm talking about being in the woods, I'm probably reaching for the Sierra Nevada just because it's pineier. It tastes like the woods pretty much. Anyway, it's gonna be it from me, so cheers and have a backcountry beer for me. This is iconic for a reason, right? This has spawned many imitators. Oh my gosh. The Santa Fe Pale Ale